She was hired to pretend. But what happens when the heart refuses to fake it? Watch as a billionaire and a struggling artist discover that love can't be scripted. It has to be felt. Will their deal destroy them, or lead them to the one thing they never thought they'd find? Welcome back to the channel, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that will touch your heart. Damian Stone was a rich and powerful businessman, but even with all his money, he was about to lose something very important, a big business deal. His investors wanted to see that he was settling down and ready for a family. They told him they wouldn't trust him with more money unless he looked serious about his future. Desperate, Damian came up with a plan. He decided to hire someone to pretend to be his fiancée, someone who would stand by his side, smile for the cameras, and act like they were in love. That's when he met Lily Carter. Lily was a young woman working 2 jobs just to pay for her sick mother's hospital bills. She was kind, talented, and hopeful, but life had been very hard on her. One evening, she spilled coffee on Damian's expensive suit while working at a cafe. He was angry at first, but then he saw something in her eyes, fear, but also strength. Damian offered her a shocking proposal: pretend to be his fiancée for 3 months. In return, he would pay all her mother's medical bills and give her enough money to start her art career. Lily felt scared. It sounded like a dangerous game, but she thought of her mother, who needed medicine and surgery. With a shaking voice, she agreed to Damian's deal. She packed her small bag and moved into his huge mansion. As she stood in the grand entrance hall, she realized her life was about to change forever. She was no longer just Lily the waitress. She was now Damian Stone's fiancée, even if it was all a lie. Lily stepped into Damian's mansion, feeling like she had walked into a different world. The floors were shiny marble, and grand staircases spiraled up into glittering chandeliers. Expensive art hung on the walls. Everything looked cold, perfect, and empty, just like the man she now had to pretend to love. Damian gave Lily a tour of the house without looking at her face. He pointed at rooms with short, sharp words: "This is your room. Stay out of my study. Our bedroom for guests to see. Remember your role." He then handed her a thick folder full of rules: how to speak to him in public, what stories to tell about how they fell in love, what kind of clothes to wear, and even how to smile for photos. The papers felt heavy in her hands, like chains. Each day they practiced their act. Damian taught her which words to use with the investors and how to laugh on cue. But when the cameras were off, he was cold and silent. He never asked about her day, her dreams, or her mother's health. His eyes were like ice. Lily felt lonely in the giant mansion. She missed her mother's small apartment, the smell of soup on the stove, and her old, cozy bed. The mansion was quiet at night, so quiet it made her heart ache. One afternoon, Damian's personal assistant came in with a list of fancy events they would attend together: charity dinners, art galas, and luxurious weekends at mountain resorts. Each event was a test to convince investors they were deeply in love. Their first appearance was at a gala held in a sparkling ballroom filled with powerful people. Lily wore a silver dress Damian had picked out. He took her hand, and they stepped into the spotlight. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Damian wrapped his arm around her waist and leaned in with a perfect smile. But even as he smiled, Lily could feel the stiffness in his touch. His hand was cold, his grip tight, like he was holding a stranger. Her heart pounded as she tried to remember every rule. She told herself again and again, "This is just an act. Don't let your real feelings show." As they danced, Damian kept a polite distance, whispering instructions: "Laugh here. Hold my hand tighter. Look into my eyes." Everyone around them looked enchanted by their performance. The investors nodded with approval. But inside, Lily felt like a puppet on strings, dancing to a song she didn't choose. That night, after hours of pretending, they returned to the mansion. Damian let go of her hand the moment they stepped out of the car. He walked ahead without a word. Lily followed, her heart heavy, wondering how long she could keep living this lie, and if it would ever feel real. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of public appearances. Damian and Lily were seen everywhere, in newspapers, on gossip websites, and even on TV shows. Each day they had to smile, hold hands, and look like the happiest couple in the world. Damian arranged fancy dinners at 5-star restaurants. They sat by candlelight, surrounded by other rich couples. The waiters brought them dishes Lily couldn't even pronounce. Damian would feed her a bite of dessert for the cameras, his face calm and perfect, but when the flash faded, he pulled his hand back like he had touched something hot. There were luxury weekend trips too. Damian booked private jets to beautiful places, snowy mountains, whites on beaches and famous cities. Every trip was filled with photographers capturing them kissing, hugging and laughing. Lily tried to play along, but each fake laugh felt emptier than the last. In Paris, Damian surprised her with a massive diamond ring during a staged proposal at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Crowds clapped and cheered as he knelt down. Lily's cheeks hurt from smiling so hard. She wanted to cry, but instead she nodded yes, and Damian slipped the ring onto her finger as cameras exploded with light. They were featured in magazines as the perfect couple. Damian Stone's fairy tale engagement. Headlines screamed how lucky Lily was. Strangers sent her gifts and letters, calling her the luckiest woman alive. But only she knew the truth, she wasn't lucky. She was trapped in a beautiful lie. Between events, they practiced their love story. Damian would sit with her for hours, going over details about how they met, their first date, and what they loved about each other. He corrected every mistake coldly. No, we met on a rainy Tuesday, not Monday. Get it right. But sometimes, when Lily forgot the script, she said something real, like how she loved sunsets because they reminded her of her mother's lullabies. Damian paused, his eyes softening for just a second, but he quickly turned away, burying his emotions again. At a charity gala one night, Lily caught herself gazing at Damian when he wasn't looking. He looked so alone in a crowd, his eyes distant even as he charmed everyone around him. She wondered what kind of pain he was hiding behind those perfect smiles. As the weeks passed, Lily found herself confused. Sometimes Damian was kind, like when he quietly placed a blanket over her shoulders when she fell asleep on the couch. Other times he was cold and distant, disappearing into his office for hours. One evening, they stood on a balcony overlooking the city lights. Damian slipped his arm around her waist as cameras clicked below. His voice was low as he whispered, "Remember, we're in love." She forced a smile, but her heart hurt, because every day it was getting harder to tell what was fake and what was real. Lily had been living in Damian's mansion for nearly a month, following his every rule, but one late night, everything started to change. The house was dark and quiet. Lily couldn't sleep. She wandered the hallways, thinking about her mother and wondering if she'd made the right choice. As she passed Damian's study, she heard something unusual, the sound of quiet sobbing. She pushed the door open just a crack and saw Damian sitting alone at his giant mahogany desk. The only light came from a small lamp, casting a soft glow on his face. He was holding a worn photograph in his hand, a picture of a smiling woman with kind eyes. His eyes looked so sad, so broken. Before she could step back, the floor creaked beneath her feet. Damian looked up sharply, his eyes red and filled with shock and anger. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice hoarse. "I heard something. I just wanted to make sure you were okay," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Damian looked away, wiping his eyes quickly. "You're not allowed in here," he said coldly, but the harshness in his voice sounded more like someone trying not to cry. Lily took a brave step forward. "Who is she?" she asked gently, nodding to the photo in his hand. He hesitated, his shoulders stiff. Then, as if the weight of the world pressed him down, he let out a shaky breath. "She's my mother," he said quietly. "She was everything to me. She died when I was 16. He told her how his mother always believed in love and kindness. But after she died, his father became cruel and obsessed with money. Damian learned to hide his feelings to survive. He stopped trusting anyone, especially women who pretended to care only to betray him." As Damian spoke, his voice cracked, and tears slipped down his face. Lily's heart ached. She slowly walked to him and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. He looked up at her, surprised by the warmth in her eyes. "You don't have to be alone," she whispered softly. "You're allowed to feel pain." Damian's walls dropped for just a moment. His eyes met hers, and they sat together in silence. The clock ticked, the night air cold outside. But for the first time since their fake relationship began, they shared something real. But as soon as he realized what was happening, Damian pulled away sharply. He stood up, his mask slipping back into place. "This changes nothing," he said firmly. "Remember our deal." He walked past her, leaving her alone in the study. Lily stood there, heart heavy, knowing that behind his icy exterior was a man who was hurting deeply. A man she couldn't help but start to care for. That night, as she lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, Lily realized the lines between their fake relationship and real feelings were starting to blur. And she wasn't sure if her heart would survive this game. After the night in Damian's study, something shifted between them. They still acted like strangers in front of the staff and guests, but behind closed doors, small moments began to bring them closer. One morning, Lily woke up to find a tray of breakfast outside her door, fresh fruit, warm croissants, and a note in Damian's neat handwriting. Eat before you start your day. It was simple, but it felt caring. She smiled, tucking the note into her journal. During the day, Damian started inviting Lily to sit with him while he worked in his home office. He rarely spoke, but he seemed comforted by her quiet presence. Sometimes she would hum softly as she sketched in her notebook, and he would pause his typing to listen. Their silences began to feel peaceful instead of awkward. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves in the mansion's old library. Thunder boomed outside as Lily ran her fingers across the shelves. "Have you read all of these?" she asked in awe. Damian chuckled softly, the first real laugh she'd heard from him. "Most. My mother loved stories. She taught me that books can take you places when life feels too heavy." Lily looked up, surprised by the warmth in his voice. "What was her favorite story?" she asked. He thought for a moment, his eyes distant but soft. "The Little Prince." She said it reminded her that what is essential is invisible to the eye. They sat by the fireplace, and Lily asked him to tell her about his childhood, the happy moments before everything went wrong. Damian talked about baking cookies with his mother, running through the garden, and falling asleep to bedtime stories. His eyes sparkled when he spoke of her, and Lily found herself laughing along with him. One evening, they cooked dinner together after the chef called in sick. Damian struggled to chop vegetables, and Lily teased him gently. He splashed her with water, and she flicked flour at his shirt. For the first time, the kitchen was filled with real laughter instead of tense silence. They shared their favorite songs and stories from their lives. Lily told him about her mother's love for music, how they would dance around their tiny apartment. Damian listened with rapt attention, seeing a side of life he had never known. On a quiet night, Damian walked into the living room to find Lily asleep on the couch, her sketchbook on her chest. He carefully picked it up and flipped through her drawings. There were pictures of the mansion, their fake engagement moments, but also small sketches of him, smiling or lost in thought. His heart clenched at how gently she saw him. Instead of waking her, Damian covered her with a soft blanket and sat nearby, watching her sleep. He realized he felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. The next morning, as Lily woke up and saw Damian sleeping in a chair next to her, her heart swelled with emotion. The walls between them were crumbling, bit by bit, replaced with quiet moments that felt real and tender. Neither of them dared to say it aloud, but they both knew something powerful was growing between them, something they couldn't keep pretending wasn't there. As Damian and Lily's connection deepened, people around them started to notice, including those who wanted to tear them apart. One afternoon, Damian's ex-girlfriend, Vanessa, showed up at his office without warning. She was beautiful, confident, and dressed in designer clothes. She stormed into his meeting and demanded to speak with him privately. "I heard you're engaged," Vanessa said sharply, tossing a tabloid magazine onto his desk with their smiling faces on the cover. "Since when do you play house, Damian?" Damian stood tall, his face expressionless. "That's none of your business," he said coolly, but inside he worried Vanessa had always been cunning. She'd once tried to blackmail him during their relationship, and he knew she would love nothing more than to ruin him now. Meanwhile, Lily was walking through the city, picking up art supplies. She overheard two women at a cafe gossiping about her. "That's the fake fiancée. Right, they say she's only in it for the money." The words stung like ice, and Lily hurried home, fighting back tears. When she returned to the mansion, Damian was waiting for her. His eyes softened when he saw her red cheeks. "What happened?" he asked almost gently. "Everyone thinks I'm a gold digger." Lily said quietly, "That I'm using you. And maybe you'll throw me away when this is over." Damian's jaw tightened, but before he could answer, his phone rang. It was Vanessa. She had taken photos of him and Lily together, and she threatened to sell them to the press with a story exposing their engagement as fake, unless Damian paid her a large sum. Damian slammed the phone down, his face pale with rage. "She's going to ruin everything," he muttered. Lily looked at him, fear and sadness in her eyes. "Is this really just a game to you?" She whispered, "Was any of it real?" He wanted to reach for her to explain, but his pride held him back. "Stick to the plan." He snapped instead. "Don't let your feelings get in the way." Hurt, Lily pulled her hand away from his and stepped back. She felt like a fool for believing the kindness he'd shown her meant something. Tears welled in her eyes as she ran upstairs, slamming her bedroom door behind her. That night, Damian couldn't sleep. He paced his room, remembering the way Lily's eyes looked so wounded. He thought about the dinners they'd shared, the stories they'd told each other, and the moments they'd laughed like real lovers. Down the hall, Lily cried into her pillow, replaying every sweet moment they'd Shared, was it all pretend? Was I just a tool? She asked herself over and over. The house, once filled with a fragile warmth, grew cold again as both of them lay awake, hearts aching and afraid to admit what they truly felt. A week later, Damian and Lily were invited to the most important event of all, an exclusive gala hosted by Damian's biggest investor. It was the night that would decide if his company would secure the final contract. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, music floated through the air, and powerful people filled the room. Damian and Lily entered arm in arm, cameras flashing around them. Their smiles were perfect, but behind Lily's eyes, sadness simmered. Damian's words from the night Vanessa called still haunted her. Stick to the plan. It felt like a knife in her chest. As they mingled, Vanessa appeared in a shimmering gown. Her eyes locked on Damian. She glided over with a wicked smile. "Oh, Damian," she purred loudly enough for people around them to hear. "Tell me again how you're marrying her for the investors. I love a good fairy tale." Gasps spread through the circle of wealthy guests. Lily's heart stopped. She looked up at Damian, waiting for him to defend her, to say something, anything, but he stood frozen, lips pressed in a tight line. The words Vanessa spat hung in the air like poison. Faces turned, whispers rose. Lily felt the room tilt as humiliation flooded her. Without thinking, she turned and fled the ballroom, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. The music swelled behind her as Damian finally snapped out of his trance and ran after her. He burst through the doors into the quiet night, the sounds of the party muffled behind them. "Lily, wait," he called, his voice cracking. She whirled on him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why didn't you say something?" she cried, her voice shaking. "You let her make me look like a liar, like I don't matter at all." "I was trying to protect the deal," Damian said helplessly. "You know how important this is." "You're right," Lily said bitterly. Stepping back, "This is all about the deal. I was stupid to think it was anything more." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I thought you were different," she whispered, her voice small and broken. "But you're just as cold as everyone says." Her words cut him like a blade. He opened his mouth to plead with her, but she turned and ran down the grand steps, disappearing into the night. Damian stood alone, the cold evening air biting at his skin. The glow from the ballroom spilled out behind him, mocking him with its warmth. For the first time in years, he felt helpless, empty, like everything he'd built was crumbling. Inside, guests buzzed with gossip. Investors exchanged worried looks. Vanessa smirked from the shadows. Damian realized that in trying to protect his business, he'd lost the one person who had made him feel alive again. And he knew, deep down, that he had no one to blame but himself. The night after the gala felt endless. Damian returned to the mansion alone, the silence heavier than it had ever been. Every room felt empty without Lily's presence. The kitchen where they cooked together, the library where they shared stories, the balcony where they'd looked out over the city lights. Now those places felt like cold reminders of what he had lost. He tried to work, but numbers and charts blurred before his eyes. His mind kept drifting back to the look on Lily's face as she ran from him, the pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw her tears. The next morning, his assistant brought him urgent news. The investors were unsettled by the scandal at the gala. Some were already threatening to withdraw their funding. Damian sat in his office, papers spread out before him, but none of it mattered anymore. He realized that he had spent years building a perfect empire, but had no one to share it with. He wandered into Lily's room. It was quiet, her scent still lingering in the air. On her nightstand sat her sketchbook. He picked it up with trembling hands and flipped through the pages. Drawings of moments they'd shared filled the book. Their laughter in the kitchen, his smile when he wasn't watching, quiet moments by the fireplace. One sketch stopped him cold. It was a picture of him asleep in the chair beside her. His face softened with peace. She had drawn him the way she saw him, not the way the world did. Tears welled in his eyes. He sank onto the bed, clutching the sketchbook to his chest, finally admitting what he had been too proud to say. "I love her." Damian thought back to the deal he had made with Lily. She had given him everything, her warmth, her kindness, her laughter, and he had treated her like a tool. He realized how wrong he had been to believe love could be controlled or bought. He had tried to keep his heart locked away, but Lily had slipped in anyway. He knew what he had to do, ignoring the calls from his board members and the frantic messages about the failing deal. Damian ordered his driver to find Lily. He learned she had gone back to her mother's small apartment. He arrived at the building, so different from his world of marble and chandeliers. He climbed the narrow stairs and stood outside her door, heart pounding. Damian knocked, no answer. He knocked again, Harder this time. Finally, the door opened a crack. Lily stood there, eyes red and tired. She looked so fragile yet strong. Lily, he began, his voice low and shaky. I was wrong about everything. About us, about love. I thought I could live without it, without you, but I can't. She stared at him, lips trembling. Why are you here? She whispered. Because I don't want a deal, he said, his eyes shining with raw emotion. I want you, the real you, not for the cameras. Not for the investors, just you. A single tear slipped down Lily's cheek. Damian stepped forward, reaching for her hands. I love you, Lily, he said, voice breaking. And I will spend every day proving it if you let me. In that quiet hallway, surrounded by peeling paint and flickering lights, Damian realized he would give up every dollar, every deal, every piece of his empire, just for the chance to make her smile again. The morning after Damian confessed his love, Lily woke up unsure if it had all been a dream. She sat by her mother's bedside, replaying his words, I love you, Lily, and I will spend every day proving it. But doubt tugged at her heart. She had seen him lie before. Could she trust him now? That afternoon, she got a call from the gallery where she used to sell her paintings. Lily, you need to come here right away, the owner said breathlessly. She hurried across town, heart pounding. When she stepped into the small art gallery, she gasped. Her paintings, dozens of them, were displayed across every wall. Each one had a red sold sticker. And standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by her art, was Damian. He looked different today, no sharp suit, no cold mask. He wore a simple shirt and jeans, his hair a little messy, his eyes soft and vulnerable. He turned when he heard her enter, his face lighting up. I bought them all, he said quietly. Every painting, not because I wanted to impress anyone, not for investors, but because your art shows the world the beauty I forgot to see. Because your soul is in every stroke of your brush, and I want to surround myself with it. Lily's eyes widened, tears filling them. She walked slowly toward him. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Damian stepped closer, taking her hands in his. Because you've shown me what love really is, he said, his voice shaking. I spent my life pretending, hiding, pushing everyone away. But you made me feel alive again. You taught me that love can't be controlled. It has to be given freely. Around them, reporters began to gather outside the gallery. Windows drawn by the news of Damian Stone's mysterious art purchase. Flashes went off. Damian ignored them all. He focused only on Lily. He took a deep breath, then dropped to one knee, pulling out a small box from his pocket. Gasps echoed through the crowd outside. Lily Carter, he said, his voice clear and strong. I don't want a fake fiancé. I don't want a deal. I want you forever. Will you marry me for real? Lily's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her heart thundered in her chest. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the raw fear that she might say no. The man kneeling before her wasn't the cold billionaire she'd met. He was the broken, beautiful man she had fallen in love with. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. Yes, Damian, I'll marry you. Cheers rose from the gallery staff, and the crowd outside as Damian slipped the ring onto her finger. He stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply, for the first time. Their embrace wasn't for show. It was real, warm, and full of love. In that moment, surrounded by Lily's art and the life they could build together, Damian knew he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. A love that was true. The days after Damian's proposal felt like a beautiful dream. The news of their real engagement spread quickly. Headlines now read, Billionaire Damian Stone finds love with artist Lily Carter. But for the first time, the stories weren't built on lies, they were true. Damian and Lily spent quiet mornings together, cooking breakfast in the mansion kitchen while music played softly. Damian loved watching Lily hum as she flipped pancakes, her eyes sparkling with happiness. He realized he hadn't felt truly alive until he heard her laugh echoing through his once empty home. They donated her old apartment to a family in need, and Damian helped move Lily's mother into a beautiful, comfortable room in his mansion. Lily's mother, frail but smiling, whispered to Damian one evening, "Thank you for loving my daughter. You've given her the life I always dreamed for her." Her words filled his heart with gratitude and quiet pride. Instead of lavish galas, Damian took Lily to simple places she loved. The old bookstore downtown, the city park where she used to sketch, the cafe where they first met when she spilled coffee on his suit. One evening at the cafe, they sat in the same corner booth, laughing about that clumsy day. Damian reached across the table and took her hand. "Thank you for ruining my suit," he teased gently. "It was the best day of my life." He changed his business practices too. Damian canceled deals with ruthless partners and invested in projects that supported art programs. education, and healthcare for the poor. He launched a scholarship in Lily's name to help young artists pursue their dreams. His staff began to see a softer side of their once feared boss. He smiled more, listened better, and treated everyone with respect. On a warm spring afternoon, Damian and Lily stood in the garden of the mansion surrounded by friends, family, and smiling staff members. Sunlight streamed through the trees, birds sang, and flower petals danced on the breeze. As Lily walked down the aisle in a flowing white dress, Damian's eyes filled with tears. He saw not just a beautiful bride, but the woman who had saved him from a life of emptiness. They spoke vows they wrote themselves. Lily promised to always remind Damian of the beauty in the world. Damian promised to never hide his heart again. Their words were simple, but every guest felt the deep love between them. When the officiant announced them husband and wife, Damian pulled Lily into a tender kiss. Cheers and laughter filled the garden. In that moment, every pain, lie, and fear melted away, replaced by the warm certainty that they had finally found where they belonged. As the sun set and stars filled the sky, they danced barefoot on the grass, their friends and family swaying around them. Damian whispered in Lily's ear, "I will love you until my last breath." She looked up at him with shining eyes and whispered back, "And I'll love you even longer." Damian and Lily traveled the world together, creating memories instead of fake moments. Their love grew stronger with each passing day. And in a quiet, cozy home, not just a mansion, but a true home, they built a life where love was real, simple, and everlasting. Thank you for joining us on this journey from a fake fiancé to a love that changed everything. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the bell so you never miss another powerful love story. Share this video with someone who believes in true love, and let us know in the comments. Do you think love can heal even the deepest wounds?